So Dr. Avinash, a big man, and doesn't need much of an introduction because he's a familiar face, with the media. And he is a practicing psychiatrist as well as, consulting psychiatrist, counselor, and who is a plethora of academic qualifications in the area of mental health. And he has been very much associated with child mental health care with schools and other facilities across the country. He has done more than 475 journals to his credit and authored a lot of books. As well as, he runs his own foundation of D'Souza Foundation. So he has also been very kind enough to accept our invite to participate and share his thoughts for this event. Thank you, Dr. Avinash, for coming here and being with us. Thank you, Sarah, for coming in. And Sarah, again, no need for introductions, because I'll be repeating again, if at all you're going to have to say introductions for Sarah also. Sarah has been a familiar anchor, VJ, and a very active person in this entertainment space. And she's also has a lot of her interest on the social activity area, and she has her concerns, and she addresses a lot of social issues on her own. And she came into the industry as a Femina Miss India Queen 2007, and she has also expressed her willingness to share her thoughts with all others during this event. And we remain thankful for you to come and attend for this event. Thank you. So Karan has been meeting me there while we were sitting there. He was the first one to wish Happy Independence Day. While we were having the conversation today. Also, my apologies. We're sorry to wish you late, but Karan took the first mile advantage, and I remain thankful to Karan because it was a last-minute call to him, and he was very kind enough to accept the invite and come. And he's got a lot of fans around the serials which he's doing with Jalak Club. So he's to represent the men's side amongst the female celebrities, on the particular cause of mental health care. Thank you and welcome, Karan. Thank you. And Dr. Chopra, the final one to come into the panel. And Chopra needs no introduction because he was the past president of the Psychiatric Association of Mumbai chapter, and he is also the chairman of the ethical committee on discussing the ethical distance between the patients and the psychiatrist on the mental health care space. And we are old friends also, as well as, and I have consulted him personally while we are doing this course. It's a privilege for us to have Dr. Chopra. And welcome, Dr. Kasi. So now we have the complete panel. So it is going to be an interactive discussion amongst both sides, the celebrity side as well as the doctors on the particular cause of mental health care. The reason why we are saying, and we thought as Doctors Foundation and Doctors and Industry Foundation to do this is because we see the mental health ignored by and large, and is also a fastest growing disease because it is not showing any cut, wound or anything which is tangible. It is not being recognized as a disease earlier, but now we see the most recognized form of mental health issue, which is recognized by the society is under the name of depression. But the causes which causes depression and the other sides of it, the effects of it in form of suicides, in terms of aggressive behavior, in terms of loneliness, in terms of leading a very pathetic life, is all because that the mind inside the human being is unable to express itself in any format. You can go to a gym, get your muscles done. You can go to a good dietitian and get your food done up, and you can add on the weight. But your mind doesn't work on any of these things. The mind works on reassurance and confidence. It gains strength only with reassurance and confidence from people from whom people believe that what they're saying is true. So that is the reason why we have the celebrities. The reason is because celebrities has got a lot of influence over the society. Because a lot of independent thinking is not happening at various levels of the society. So when the celebrities speak from their perspective, not as themselves, but from the perspective of the subject, it will be received well. We have doctors, because when the topics which is discussed by the celebrities on your own, which is authenticated by the doctors from their perspective on that particular subject, it has got the science merging with the practical life aspect, which is received, or we are trying to get this received well by the recipients, which is the general population. What we are trying to achieve here is also to address mental health issues at the pre-stage of people going into a mental health issue, the stage in which people are in a mental health situation, in form of depression or anything, and the post-traumatic stage, on how they recover. If at all our awareness building can help people to come out and express themselves, that is, they feel they're deprived of something. The mind lacks courage. So this is where we're getting started with. So from anybody who can get the conversation started from here. So the panel is up, open. Whomsoever is willing to take the call to get started with. We'll start with Kirti. Yeah, we have mics there. Yeah, these are mics.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Firstly, thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you, Subarna. Thank you, Divya, who's not here. And thank you, all my co-panelists, for being together on this. It is surely an issue that I really believe in, and that's the sole reason that I'm here today. I think Matthew just mentioned that depression, to begin with, depression is a very tangible thing. It's a very, very real thing, So I know that people who go through depression, firstly, there's so much going on in terms of depression. And I think, if I'm not wrong, the symptoms are so general, I would say. I think, am I right on this? Like, in terms of mood swings, or feeling low, or being moody, or lack of confidence, or a lot of negativity. I mean, I think people experiencing these symptoms firstly are not aware that this could be just something more than normal mood swings or something like that. On top of that, people around these patients, sometimes see it as seeking attention-seeking behavior, or just being moody. So I think first people need to be made aware of the fact that depression is an increasing mental disorder that a lot of people in the world are facing today, and it is not limited to any class, any age group, any life circumstances. You could be anybody. You could have any sort of experiences, and you could still experience depression at some point or the other in life. Also, I think the problem is the attitude that we have as a community towards mental disorders specifically. I mean, today, if I a cold, if I'm not able to control it, I can very much go to a doctor and everybody would be like, yeah, that's the way to do it. But today, if I have something, if I have an issue, a mental issue or an emotional issue that I am not capable of handling, and I decide to go and seek help for it, I'm sure there'll be a lot of eyebrows just raised because I'm going ahead and taking a step like this. Especially, I mean, I'm sure the media, there is a side to media which is present here and which is supporting this cause, but there's also another side to media which will be the first ones to put it in headlines saying, so-and-so, you know, visited a psychiatrist, or so-and-so has a mental problem, or so-and-so is mad, if they really want to seek a lot of attention. So I think this is the stigma that's really attached to mental disorders, and this is the attitude we as people need to change. You know, being in an industry which is the glamour industry, so to say, firstly we are all creative people, and I think as creative people, it's anyway a big task to keep your space, to keep your mental, emotional space sane, and really come up with something on a daily basis that excites you, that the audiences you know, want to see on screen. On top of that, there is an additional pressure of just looking pretty, of looking perfect all the time. And I mean, sometimes people tend to forget that before anything else, we are humans. We are actors, you know, that's our profession, but we are humans. And we, like anybody else out there, have similar problems. And our problems are enhanced, are you know, they become multifold by the mere pressure of how people perceive us, how people want to see us, you know. And we are really, to put it honestly, we are more prone to having these breakdowns than other people around because of the pressures around. And then on top of that, if we do not go out there and, you know, because we are also like today, if I'm shooting for a film and if I have a breakdown, physical, mental or emotional, and for some reasons I'm not able to come on the set, there are a lot of people waiting out there for me. There's a lot of money at stake, you know. So it's actually my responsibility as an actor to really take care of myself. And I'm sorry, but however people look at it, I will be selfish when it comes to my health. I will do whatever needs to be done to just remain healthy, for my sake, for my industry's sake, for the people who depend on me every day. Also, you know, celebrities, of course, go through a lot of pressure, but I would also like to mention the kids. I think the celebrity kids, like that's how we like to call them. I mean, they have, the only thing that they have to do with the industry is that their parents are from the industry. And especially the teenagers, I mean, you see so many kids around who, teenage, I think, is a phase in life which I don't think anybody can prepare you for. Your parents can't prepare you for it, your teachers can't. And I think you just have to take it for what it is. And considering the way the social media is, considering how much everyone depends on a kind of assurance from the outside these days to, you know, feel good about themselves or feel right about themselves, it is a lot of pressure on the kids as well. And I think so all I'm trying to say is that considering the amount of pressures we are all dealing with on a day-to-day basis, it becomes even more necessary, more than ever, that today we have the awareness, as I said. The second thing, most important, is acceptance. To accept that there is something that is wrong with me. It is not the end of the world, but yes, there is something that needs my attention, and I will go out there and seek whoever's help I need to get this sorted. And I think thirdly, as a community, we need to create an atmosphere, create an environment where everyone feels safe, everyone feels loved, cared for, and most importantly, empowered, to really empower themselves. I think it's a responsibility that we all need to take for ourselves and for everyone around us. Thank you.
Okay, let me give you a little information of, say, about 1 billion Indians, and we're just looking at the Indian population. We're looking at anything between 20 and 30% of them who are going to have one episode of depression for which they are going to need help. In this room, 20 to 30% of us would have had experiences severe enough to actually have been classified as having a depressive episode. The unfortunate part of this is that most of you would not actually seek help. And if you're looking at 1 billion Indians and we're looking at about 20% of that, you can imagine that that's a huge population. When I was a medical student, we were told that the commonest age that depression started was around age 17. Today, Avinash and I are diagnosing depression as young as 7 and 8 and 9 years old. So it's a terrible indictment of what's happening in our society. Why does depression happen? Nobody really knows. But we do know that there's a whole bunch of things that might be causing it. There's certainly a genetic factor. If somebody in the family has had depression, then the chances that the child would have it goes up exponentially. There are neurotransmitter imbalances. There is something called neuroplasticity of the brain which causes issues. There may be actual structural changes in the brain. When we do PET scans and fMRIs, we find certain parts of the brain are functioning differently in a person who is prone to have a depressive episode. All of these things point to the fact that it is a disorder. The guy is not doing it on purpose. He's not behaving in a particular way because he doesn't like your face. He's doing it because he has a problem. Just like if you were asthmatic and you had a breathlessness attack, you'd hope that people around you wouldn't say, oh, snap out of it, stop breathing so heavily. Just like that, we would expect that if somebody was depressed and sad and not reacting well and very gloomy and not interacting, or at the other extreme being very aggressive, because occasionally aggression can just be a symptom of depression, we'd hope that people around them would take them seriously and not say something like, oh, he or she is like that, don't pay attention to her. That doesn't really make sense. Amongst kids, sometimes the only symptom we see is somatization, which means the kid will complain of a chest ache, a stomach ache, a headache, doesn't want to go to school, and you say there's something wrong in school, and things like that go through all the investigations, through all the other disciplines of medicine, and then finally some sensible physician will say, looks like he's stressed out, looks like he may be depressed, go see a psychiatrist. It's essential for all of us to accept that this is a problem, because we're talking of 20 to 30% of the population. And one of the biggest fears associated with depression is suicide. But suicide is not the only thing. You have addictions. You have a person who's not in a position to do as well as he could have to actualize his own potential just because he's so depressed. He can't think cognitively. You have relationships getting affected because one person is so depressed and the spouse just cannot cope with the mood. You have kids who get affected because one or the other parent is so badly, he has such a bad mood that the kid starts wondering what on earth is happening. You have an increase, like I said, of addictions. You have people who just lie in bed the whole day not wanting to do anything, getting very frightened and scared of doing stuff which they could have had no problems whatsoever in doing. And what is our reaction to that? He's acting like an ass. That's not how we should be looking at this. Women, being in a patriarchal society like India, women actually get the short end of the stick. And especially if you're in the limelight, like these ladies are, or the gentleman is, obviously it becomes a bigger problem. But let me say it affects just about every profession. We have doctors who are depressed. A lot of consultants, I'm attached to 3 hospitals, a lot of consultants come up to us and talk about the problems that they're facing. We have lawyers and judges who are responsible for judgments who are on medication. We have top industrialists who come up to us and have issues. And like I was telling them some time ago, we have an industrialist who comes up to me and he's absolutely stable, but he says, Doc, can you just imagine if I went out in public and said I was depressed? the shares in my company would drop because they'd say, how can a guy who's depressed run this company? Our attitude has to change. Like she said quite correctly, if I have a cold, it's no big deal. But if I tell somebody I'm going to see Dr. Chopra, oh my God, it becomes an issue. Our perspectives have to change into just accepting it like something else, which will certainly come under control, which has to come under control. And the moot point is, the earlier it's caught, the earlier it's diagnosed, the better the chances are of a complete recovery. I am thrilled to bits that in this year, after so many years of independence, we've got Doc Plus, we've got Chopra, we've got Matthew, who's a very dear friend in addition to being somebody. I must have done something good. He's a good chap now. I'm so glad that they've taken up this thing because I think as a society matures, as a society becomes more philosophical, we've got to look at other aspects, not only food, clothing and shelter. We've got to look at how we can actualize our potential. We talk about India being a potential superpower. Well, it's not going to be a potential superpower if mental issues are not addressed. I think it is absolutely essential for the media, which by and large is extremely supportive to issues associated with mental health, provided they don't sensationalize it, to focus on stuff which is going to affect 1/5 of our population.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra. So,
must all really discuss freely and without any reservation. In the age of Facebook, it's extremely depressing to live in this age because everyone puts their best pictures up. I've been holidaying in Maldives or Mauritius or somewhere. I bought a new car, I've done this, I've done the other, and then your life seems so pale in comparison. And it seems like nothing is happening. I just go to office and come back. I take the train or the bus and I meet that horrid boss of mine and I come back. And so goes my day and I've got so many issues. Hardly anyone posts anything on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook about what problems they're going through. The rare, brave soul does that. And in this age of out-blinging each other, everything from your nails to your eyelashes have bling on them. Somehow I think there's a kind of covering of what happens on the inside. How there's a kind of loneliness that happens. You could have 2,000 friends on Facebook, but maybe not even one real person to talk to when you're in trouble. And I think that's somewhere the disconnect. Earlier there were these warm, highly dysfunctional, but very, very functioning in one way joint families, where there was always the dada, the dadi, the chacha, the cousin to talk to take your troubles to, and somebody would come along and snap you out of whatever you were going through. I'm sure I'm not talking about like really deep, chemical imbalances and stuff like that. I'm talking about, there was a natural passage to grief, or if you've lost your job, you will be sad, and that sadness must be allowed. You cannot suddenly start being happy or go to the bar and have 3 drinks and expect that sadness of losing that job will no longer affect you. It will affect you because your money is not coming. So I think there's a natural, easier pace to life. Here suddenly, but human beings, I think psychologically, we've not transformed that much, have we, doctor? We still continue to be hardwired in pretty much the same way that we were earlier. So we don't give ourselves that time to come out of things. It's like, कल आपके साथ कुछ प्रॉब्लम हुई है तो आज ही आपको ठीक हो जाना चाहिए. कैसे हो जाएगा? I don't think it's going to happen. That natural process, if you've had a breakup, if you've had something that you were really hoping for, and it didn't happen, it will take you a few days, maybe a few months to come out of it. And that pace of life today, the disconnectedness amongst people doesn't allow for that. And I think that the good doctors who are on this panel and Subarna and Matthew have, sort of taken this initiative to talk about this, that there needs to be, if there isn't a friend, there should at least be a doctor that you can go to and talk to and get help. Because I myself have dealt with, in a career spanning about 20 years, my parents were not expecting me to become an actor. They thought it was a very dumb thing to do at that point. But I really wanted to become an actor. And when my first film flopped, it was extremely depressing. It was a very, very, very bad phase because it was such a public humiliation. And I was always a topper in my school and college, and nobody expected that I would not do well at this as well. But I had no training, nothing. I just came into it like jumping the deep end. And my parents were dealing with their own idea of, oh, we should have told her not to do it, we should have been stronger with her. So they were dealing with their own stuff, and I was left to deal with my own stuff, and I was living alone in Bombay. And I remember not wanting to come back to an empty flat, which I was living in at that point. And I think of the hundreds and thousands of young boys and girls, as young as 7 or 8, as you're saying now. My heart goes out to them because, you know, it's a large number of people. And as Kirti and Dr. Chopra pointed out, that there's like, you know, there's an expectation to snap out of it. क्या हो रहा है आपको? इतना क्यों लंबा मुंह बना के बैठे हो? Kind of, you know, reaction to the whole thing. So luckily, over a period of time, I sought help and I was able to bounce back quite well. But there are lots of people who are not so lucky, and the downward spiral, I think once it starts, it's very hard to stop it spinning downward. Very wonderful that we're having this discussion and opening up the topic, because the more people that talk about it, discuss it, and not fear it. Because if I'm not wrong, because I was doing some research on my own, every person at some point or the other will go through a depressive phase in their life.
Well, you may go through a depressive phase, but it may not be severe enough to be called a depressive disorder.
But there would be people who, for example, the death of a parent or losing a job, if they have the right stimuli, like you mentioned, if a parent if the chances go up exponentially. So all of those things, if the right triggers are there in that person or the wrong triggers are there, then that person would go into a phase.
Yeah. So we normally talk about multifactorial reasons. It's very unlikely that one thing is going to trigger off a problem. You know, you probably have to be very tired at that time. You have a genetic component. Something else has happened. You haven't eaten properly. You've seen an accident. Somebody has screamed at you, and a combination of all of these events probably would tip you over the edge in a sense. So not everybody is depressed. Everybody would have signs and symptoms of depression. Everybody might have depressive traits. But to be called a depressive disorder is a slightly more accentuated form of whatever you're experiencing.
But when somebody is going through a depressive phase in their life, say there has been some active trigger or triggers, then that person may or may not be able to bounce back by themselves.
Absolutely. In fact, you know, even in the depression spectrum, there are a whole bunch of things like what we call a depressive disorder, we call a bereavement reaction, which is what you're talking about. There's something that we find in kids called disruptive dysregulation disorder. So there are a whole bunch of subsets even of this whole spectrum of depression. But I think it's probably the extent of the reaction which would make us as doctors say that you have this disorder and we need to deal with it. It's like every restless kid may not be called hyperactive attention deficit disorder. So just like that, we have gradations of the symptoms that you're talking about. But you're quite correct in that sometimes it's extremely difficult, even for people who have not really been diagnosed as having the disorder, to be able to bounce back. This bouncing back thing is something that we need to get out of.
Also, I think it would be greatly helped if people didn't immediately start calling these people or people who go through this as mad, ya pagal ho gaye, hile hue hain, you know, all those kind of reactions. That sort of stops, and I think people will be far more comfortable and confident to come out and actually let some sunshine and air into that area of their lives.
I would absolutely agree with you, and fortunately the trend is changing. So pagalpan has now become dimag ka doctor, which sounds a little better.
Thanks, Tisca. It was.
Because of the nature of the highs, would have just talking about physics. If there is something that goes that high, it would bound to go that low as well. So I think would if you talk to them privately, whether they admit it or not, they would have had phases of what the doctor would call classic.
Exactly.
What do you call it? The what? not
Depressing.
phase, what would you call it, like actually depressing? Clinically. They would
Clinically
require it. Okay, let's put it this way, they would require intervention.
Okay. And thanks to KP also, because she was also very open about talking about the pressures of being in the industry of entertainment, where you have to look beautiful at the end of the day, whatever. Yes. Thank you. And Sarah, what's your take on now? We've developed this conversation to this level.
So I was a good student and I came prepared with a speech, and now you'll have taken all my points away. But I will read anyway. No, firstly, thank you, Shubarna especially, because Shubarna called me very enthusiastically last Sunday, and I was in a noisy car with friends. But I heard a few words, and she had my interest immediately, because I remember thinking it's so nice that someone's finally taking the initiative to put together a panel like this and have these kinds of discussions. So I'm going to read something that I wrote from personal experience, because it's how I express the best. So bear with me. 71 years ago, a visionary man said, "I want freedom for the full expression of my personality." That man was Mahatma Gandhi. So happy Independence Day. I want freedom for the full expression of my personality. I thought this was a really interesting desire, because it made me wonder, do we actually fully and freely express the various facets of our personalities? I don't think we do. And I'll draw you a picture. So it's a typical Indian household. A boy comes home triumphantly and announces. He says to his parents that he's gotten into a university of their dreams, of course. And the father says, "Shabash beta, dekho, mujh pe gaya," right? And the mother says, "Don't be ridiculous, he gets his brains from my side of the family." And mithai mangao, and everyone's celebrating. And let me draw you another picture. Typical Indian household, the boy comes home and says to his dad, "Mom, Dad, I don't feel like getting out of bed on most mornings. On most mornings I have dull headaches, my heart is racing, I think I'm anxious." And the father says, "Nonsense. These are all your generation problems. We never had these problems when we were young." And the mother will say, "Beta, why don't you go out and, go for a drink with your friends? It'll be a good distraction." You can't distract your way out of anxiety, at least not for too long. And this is the reality of the society that we live in. I think it's because in the common Indian household, the belief is that if you don't talk about something for long enough, and if you ignore it, it will simply disappear. Well, I'm here to tell you, and there are plenty of statistics available to prove to you that it won't. Everyone in this room knows at least one person who is suffering silently from some kind of mental illness. Silently being the key word. Depression and anxiety are real, and they are spreading just like any other virus does, and they are claiming lives and minds by the second. And I can tell you this with added confidence, because I myself have battled both, and I have found my freedom from them. I can tell you it was not an easy road, and it is also heartbreaking to admit that I have lost a couple of friends to them along the way. So why do people suffer in silence? It's because they are conditioned to believe that if they confess to their depression, anxiety, and feelings of insecurity or doubt, that they will be judged, that they will be shamed, that they will be told, especially boys, "Man up, brush it off, get a life." Because if you say that, God forbid if you say, and God forbid if you have it, "I have cancer," people will take you seriously. But if you tell someone that you are depressed, I don't think they'll take you that seriously. Even though studies have repeatedly proven that prolonged and ignored mental illness can and will cause serious damage to the physical body. I've had the blessings and good fortune to be surrounded by supportive friends and family who supported me in my need to express my troubled feelings and seek the necessary help from counselors and psychotherapists. And I still work very hard to express myself as truthfully as possible in a safe environment. And I believe it's important to use that word, in a safe environment, because sometimes I believe that half of the healing happens when you find a safe place that is judgment-free to just express yourself. Now imagine if we could provide that to our friends and our family in the very comfort of their own homes. Yes, of course, there are matters in which we are ill-equipped to help, which is why we have professionals like the one sitting on the panel today to help our friends and family out. And I also must admit, it is a bit unnerving to admit these kind of things in front of doctors who can see right through you. I think it requires more strength to admit to one's weaknesses than to wear a mask of pretentious normality. I mean, ask me, I'm an actor. We do a great job of wearing that mask. But I can tell you, again from personal experience, that it was one of the most liberating experiences to take that mask off in that safe environment and receive the right kind of guidance and the tools that helped me deal with my anxiety and my depression. And I'd like to end with this. We tell our youth that if you put your mind to anything, you can achieve it. Don't you think then that it is our responsibility to make sure that their minds are healthy? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We had this debate of whether asking the celebrities to share their own experience. So we ourselves took a safe pose that why should we put a difficult question to them, because they have the pressure of being exposed to the media. But I'm very happy to see the courage in all the three beautiful ladies to express themselves in a confident manner that they too have had their tough times. Well, I will come to you, Karan. But I would like to see Dr. Avinash view on how this is and how we can tackle this, because the fear of being tabooed or the fear of being tagged as a mental patient is what is stopping people from expressing this. So I'd like to get your view on that.
I have always believed that psychiatrists have to go to people, because the stigma of visiting a psychiatrist is always there. So in my work, I always try to go to schools, colleges, meet people, talk to people. A very simple question that I always pose is, after the age of 25 or 30, people get a yearly health checkup done wherever they work. How many people ever think of getting a yearly mental health?
Side of celebrity, speaking about the depression and the mental side of it. What is your view? What's your take on the whole subject?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you, especially Matthew, for keeping me last in line to talk, because this is the biggest point of stress as of right now. But, I've been called here to speak about what stress means to me, and I've been given 7 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try very hard to explain stress to you guys, what it means to me in the next 7 minutes. Now, what I've done successfully is that I've actually put my mind under enough pressure, because I've said I'm going to try very hard to think about how I'm going to explain stress to you guys in the next 7 minutes. So what I've done is, I've put myself under pressure, that I'm going to make an impression, because, I have to make some sense. We're sitting in, with a panel of doctors. And B, I've given it a time limit of 7 minutes by further on adding pressure to my mind. But this is what I do. This is my basic problem. I'm a thinker by nature. I overthink everything. And I feel somewhere, because I was never interested in studying in school, is why I'm trying to overcompensate today. But fortunately, I read on to some books early on in my life, some very basic theories, 2 books that really aided my state of mind. One was Power of Now, and the second one was Tipping Point. Now, what both of these talk about is, the Power of Now speaks about being in the moment, living this moment, and Tipping Point primarily speaks about listening to your instinct. And I genuinely believe that in times of today, we've stopped enjoying right now. We've stopped enjoying this moment. And why I'm speaking about these 2 problems specifically is because these are my problems. This is what I face on a daily basis. That I don't enjoy the moment. I don't enjoy this moment. I don't relish it at all. Instead, I'm constantly planning. I'm always planning. I'm trying to move ahead. And that's what I've been really trying to do. You know, I've made it a conscious effort to take a step back, relish this moment, you know, enjoy all the juices, and then with that drive, go out there and plan my next step. Now the second one, instinct, what we were talking about earlier. I know it's a very immature, premature sort of approach to stress and depression, but I genuinely believe that, you know, there's a space somewhere between our heart and our mind which we've triggered, that answers back to us, that guides us in a fraction of a second, and it's high time that we start listening to it. So I've been making that effort. I've been trying to listen to my instinct to guide me further. And I genuinely believe that, you know, these two things we should not ignore. You know, having said that, I really feel that, you know, I'm probably not the most educated, definitely not the most educated to speak about stress. I probably am the youngest, or one of the youngest in this room to speak about this. And I'm definitely not the most experienced in life, but that's what I feel. You don't need to be any of these things. I don't need to be of a certain age to speak about stress. I don't need to be of a certain sex to speak about stress, because stress doesn't have a demographic. And that's the unfortunate part, that every time, and I have faced this personally, that I've spoken about stress, that I've always been brushed off by saying, come on, you know, you're young, get over it. You know, it's life, shit happens, move on. And the best one that you get as a man, genuinely, is be a man. It's as simple as that. The only advice that I've gotten in 30 years of my life when I've been down and out is be a man. So that basically means that as a man, you're not allowed to feel emotions per se. But the funny part is, I am already overthinking things. I have things that are bothering me. I definitely know I am a man, but I need someone that can hear me out. And that's what I find very unfortunate. I'm glad that we're all here today just to address this. So some things might sound repetitive, but I'm glad that they do, because, you know, that's exactly what we're trying to address here. You know, I'm an actor by profession, and definitely ma'am has much more experience than me. But, you know, we all face very challenging jobs, and I'm sure doctors do as well. But, you know, we're always on the go, 18 to 20-hour days, not getting our scripts on time, having performance pressure, like Kirti said, constantly the need to look good. You know, being a man, you know, going without water, parched for 2 days because you're meant to show off those six-pack abs. To being on a forum like this between doctors and all of you guys speaking about something that I'm not qualified to my personal life, which is constantly under the speculation, it's under the radar. You know, all of these things have such a high stress level, and I feel like, you know, there's a point of saturation that we all get to. And I've seen some of my very close friends, like Doctor was saying, that resort to drugs and that get into chronic depression. But how do I cope with it? Well, what I do is very basic, and which is talk. You know, that's what I do. I talk. I know it's not simple, but because it's not easy to go out there and express yourself, especially go out there naked with your emotions. And believe me, especially being a man is so hard to go out there saying that you're hurting about something emotionally. Because, you know, when I was growing up, I was always taught, boys don't cry. You know, you're not meant to cry as a guy. But fortunately, one thing that I learned while I was growing up, that bol de yaar, dil halka ho jayega. So that's what I do. That's what I do to cope with it. And fortunately, I have a very close-knit relationship with my family, and we have a very open forum at home where we address issues. And not only my issues, because I'm young and my parents can advise me, but even my parents' issues. My parents speak to me about their interpersonal relationships. It could be things related to finances of the house, extended family issues, anything under the roof. And we all sit there, post at 30, once the TVs are down, and we advise to our best capability without being judgmental. And I genuinely believe that that is such a beginning point, just communicating and addressing things that are bothering you, because that's what leads eventually to bottling things up and chronic depression, like, you know, everybody's been talking about. And I feel like it's important to have somebody in your life. It could be family, that's what works for me. It could be a close relationship, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, husband, wife. It could be a mentor, it could be anybody, but just opening that line of communication is very important. And believe me, if all of this did not work for me, I, being a man, being from a profession of public speculation, would definitely go out there and seek medical advice if it doesn't help me. And yeah, I think I did pretty okay, right? You don't have to pull your ear. And I think that was a good less than 7 minutes. So what I'm going to do is, instead of talking, I'm just going to look at all you guys. There's an esteemed panel of speakers, doctors, the media. And I'm going to relish this moment right now that I'm in. I'm going to enjoy it. Because I just spoke on 15th August 2017 about stress with a smile on my face. Jane.
Though you mentioned a couple of times, that you have your doubts on being qualified to speak on this, I think you did a fantastic job of speaking on this. So, from our perspective, the objective of this panel was to get a communication to the public about the need to come out and express. On the 70th Freedom Day, we are requesting through this forum, through this panelists, through the celebrities, which the people believe in. And all of them, we were so happy for them being so honest about it and so upright about your personal experiences, and doctors also being very honest about how they have to treat these kind of things. So I remain thankful to the media as well as Shivana and Abhinav for coordinating that things, and we will take the question and answers if there is anything from the media to the panelists. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I run a startup for women. So it's been 3 years, and so my query to you is, we get a lot of emails from women achievers. My job is to interview very prominent women achievers. So we get a lot of queries from working women in metro cities. And surprisingly, a lot of them seem to be undergoing depression and anxiety. So my query to all of you is that, do depression and anxiety, do they come in the same breath? I mean, and also I've received this query a lot, that we're having this medication and all of that, but will I ever get off it? Or so it's a very prominent query, so just for my platform, so I can write about it.
Yeah, okay, so let me talk about,
Thank
he was talking about the myths of psychological disorders. One of the biggest myths is that of medication. Now let's look at it in a couple of perspectives. To begin with, every person is not going to need medication. If a person does need medication, every person doesn't need to take medication for the rest of his life, which everybody is so frightened about. But on the other hand, if you're looking at it in a different perspective, if you had diabetes for which you needed insulin for the rest of your life, you're not going to get very freaked out about it. If you had high blood pressure and you're taking an antihypertensive for the rest of your life, you'd probably be very careful about it and take it. If you had hypercholesterolemia and you had a high blood cholesterol, you'd take statin for the rest of your life and you wouldn't get freaked out about it. If you had a thyroid issue and you have suggested that you were taking something to supplement the low thyroid functioning in your body, you wouldn't bother about it. But the Lord forbid, if you were depressed and you were maintained fantastically with one small tablet, you wouldn't want to take it for the rest of your life because it deals with mental health. So my thing is, you're not going to be on medication for the rest of your life by and large. But if you were, why the hell are we freaking out about it? Because it affects your mind? So does everything. The thyroid works through your brain. Antihypertensives by and large work through your brain, but nobody freaks out about it. But since it's dealing with depression, it is taboo. It is better that I'm down, that I don't have a good quality of life, that I'm occasionally suicidal, that I occasionally cut myself, that I frown and I cry, but I will not take that one tablet. So I think in acceptance, we also have to accept that it's okay to take medication. It doesn't make us less of a person. Taking that into account, by and large, the rule of thumb is a drug-naive person, that is a person who's never taken medication before, would normally have to take the first episode medication for a period of about a year. After that, a year of stability. After that, we try to reduce, and I'd say about 60 to 70% of most cases don't seem to need it again. 30% might. That's point number one. point number 2, let's not take everything for granted. Let's also not take it that just because you're down, you're depressed, because you're anxious, you're having a little bit of anxiety, you come under that spectrum of anxiety. What you spoke about depression and anxiety is extremely relevant. There is a large comorbid factor, which means two things can coexist. They don't necessarily, it is not necessary that one leads to another. It's not necessary that depression leads to anxiety or anxiety leads to depression. They are absolutely separate entities in themselves with separate signs and symptoms and separate treatments. The bottom line is, I'd say about 50 to 60% people are comorbid with each other. There also seems to be maybe a slightly increased tendency in the female sex. So since you're starting a startup and you're so racially divisive, you don't have men in it, it's not surprising that you're getting such a large concentration of women who have this problem. Well, I'm not too sure about that. I don't think... I don't think a man feels less. Well, I certainly believe women are more vocal.
So that's always a gap between anxiety and depression because people always...
There's another little anecdote which I must share. This thing about not taking people for granted. A long time ago, I was going up to Pune in a car, and when I reached almost the top of the ghats, I found I had a puncture. And I checked, and my stepney wasn't there. For some odd reason, somebody had taken it off. I didn't particularly want... I'm sorry, my stepney was there. I took it out, and while I was moving the nuts of the punctured tire, for some odd reason, all 4 nuts fell off and they rolled down the cliff. Now, I was kind of stuck. I didn't know what on earth to do, and I was looking around wondering what to do, and suddenly I heard a lot of shouting in the nearby corner, and I looked up, and lo and behold, I had actually parked just outside the Pune asylum. And there was this guy screaming, hey, hey, hey! So, first I tried to ignore him, but he was very, very vociferous. So he was screaming, and I looked at him, and I said, what? He said, I saw those nuts rolling down. I said, yeah, good for you. They rolled down, now what? He said, I have an idea. And I said, what? He said, take out 1 screw from each of the remaining 3 tires. So then you can put it on your 4th tire. You will have 3 screws on each tire. Your car can roll to the closest garage. And I was like, wow, that's great. So he says, what do you mean? I might be mad, but I'm not stupid. Let's not take anything for granted. So our perspective when we look at people who might be depressed or anxious, sometimes we talk to them very loudly because we think they're deaf. Sometimes we talk to them like, aap samajh sakte ho, like we think they're retarded, and they're not. They're normal people who have a disorder. And I think we need to look at it in that perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Kersey, for that beautiful anecdote. And with this, we conclude the press meet. And the biggest message which you've got is that the celebrities here, as well as the doctors, have endorsed that there is a need for people to express themselves. And they should have the courage to have the freedom to express. So when you carry out all the newses in the world, our request is, that on this 70th day of freedom, let's pass this message to the general public that doctors, that we are putting the freedom to express the minds so that we have a healthy India, we have a very free India coming across so that we can become the superpower. And now to conclude, I call upon Aspi Engineer, the CEO of Moshe's Cafe, to thank the guest of honors for being here, for taking time out from their life and being here for this day. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Aspi, over to you.
Independence Day and Happy Janmashtami.
हैप्पी जन्माष्टमी
Yes.
एंड फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन की जैसा हमने बात की डिप्रेशन की बात की जैसे इंडिपेंडेंस डे के मौके पर कोई एक ऐसी बात आप कहना चाहेंगे लोगों को अपने फैन के जरिए मैसेज देना चाहेंगे जो कि हमारी सोसाइटी के लिए लाभकारी हो अधिकदायक हो?
मैं दोनों थीम्स को जोड़ते हुए इंडिपेंडेंस डे है और हम फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन की बात कर रहे हैं डिप्रेशन को लेकर, तो मैं एक यही संदेश देना चाहूँगी कि एक्सप्रेस योर सेल्फ्स, अपने आप को, अपनी भावनाओं को, आपको क्या महसूस होता है, अपनी फीलिंग्स को, अपने थॉट्स को एक्सप्रेस करने की मुझे पता है इट्स नॉट ईजी टू ओपन अप एंड टॉक अबाउट व्हाट यू रियली फील एंड व्हाट यू आर रियली फीलिंग एंड गोइंग थ्रू, लेकिन ये बहुत बोल्ड चीज़ होती है कि बिना जजमेंट्स की परवाह किए हुए आप अपने आप से, अपने पीपल यू लव इन योर फैमिली, योर फ्रेंड्स, इफ़ यू नीड टू even doctors, just go out there. If you think there's something not right, something that you're not feeling right about, and things are not going the way you think they should, then please open up. Feel free to express yourselves to anyone you have faith in.
हिंदू सरकार हमने देखी, लोगों ने आपकी एक्टिंग को बहुत
Yeah.
सराहा।
जी।
इसके बाद आप क्या धमाका करने वाले हैं?
मैं धमाका नहीं, मैं रायता फैलाने वाली हूँ. इट्स अ फिल्म कॉल्ड रायता. फिल्म का नाम है रायता, इरफान खान के साथ है और वी फिनिश शूटिंग फॉर इट. ये रिलीज़ आई थिंक मेरे ख्याल से इस साल शायद नहीं हो पाएगी, Jan-Feb में इसका प्लान है. तो ब्लैक कॉमेडी है, बहुत मज़ेदार होने वाली है. तो और जैसा मैंने कहा कि बहुत सारा रायता फैलाने वाले हैं हम.
कैसा रहा इरफान खान के साथ शेड्यूल?
इरफान ये सब ऐसे लेजेंड्स हैं कि मतलब उनके सामने शर्म आती है अपने आप को एक्टर बुलाते हुए, क्योंकि इरफान इज शोरली वन ऑफ द बेस्ट वी हैव इन द कंट्री राइट नाउ, एंड इवन इंटरनेशनली वो इतना अच्छा कर रहे हैं. तो इरफान तो बहुत ग्राउंडेड हैं, बहुत सिंपल इंसान है. आप लोग भी आई एम श्योर मिलते होंगे. बहुत ग्राउंडेड हैं, बहुत सिंपल हैं और अपने आप को ज़मीन से जुड़ा हुआ रखते हैं. और जहाँ मेरी सोच ख़त्म होती है एज एन एक्टर, उनकी सोच वहाँ से शुरू होती है. सो आई डोंट नो यार. मैंने कहा कि ये टी सीरीज़ की फिल्म है, तो इरफान की शायद एक और फिल्म है उससे पहले जिस पे प्लानिंग चल रही है. तो आई थिंक Jan-Feb में होगा. तो जो भी होता है 40-45 दिन पहले ट्रेलर जो लॉन्च होता है, आई एम श्योर आप लोगों को पता चल जाएगा. जी जी. देखिए स्ट्रेस डिपेंड करता है, डे टू डे स्ट्रेस जो हम फील करते हैं एज एन एक्टर, फिजिकल भी होता है, इमोशनल भी होता है, मेंटल भी होता है. जिस तरह की फिल्में मैं करती हूँ, पिंक एंड हिंदू सरकार, थोड़ा ज़्यादा हो जाता है. बिकॉज मैं यूजुअली शूटिंग के बाद मैं एक ब्रेक लेना पसंद करती हूँ. मैं ट्रैवल करती हूँ और जहाँ पे मैं सब कुछ छोड़ छाड़ के सिर्फ इंजॉय करती हूँ बहुत. सो आई थिंक दैट्स माई वे ऑफ लेटिंग गो ऑफ माई स्ट्रेस. बट उसके अलावा मेरे ख्याल से एवरीडे बेसिस पे मैं योगा करती हूँ, मैं मेडिटेशन करती हूँ अगर मुझे ज़रूरत तो होती है, और म्यूज़िक सुनती हूँ, फिल्में देखती हूँ और अपनी फैमिली के साथ टाइम स्पेंड करती हूँ. सो ये कुछ तरीके हैं जिनसे मैं अपने आप को स्ट्रेस फ्री रखने की कोशिश करती हूँ. She had a question, sorry. क्यों देते हैं आप लोग इतना प्रेशर यार? देखिए ना. See, it depends again. अगर जैसे मैंने कहा कि अगर मुझे आज जुकाम है और मेरे को जुकाम है और मैं 2-3 दिन जुकाम से जूझ रही हूँ और फिर भी मेरे कंट्रोल में नहीं आ रहा है, तो मैं डॉक्टर के पास जाऊँगी. ऐसा ही मेंटल स्टेट के साथ है. जब अगर मैं हैंडल कर सकती हूँ इन चीज़ों से, जिससे मैंने कहा कि जो स्ट्रेस रिलीज़ करने की चीज़ें होती हैं, अगर मैं उनसे डील कर सकती हूँ, उनके थ्रू डील कर सकती हूँ डेली बेसिस पे, तो मैं नहीं जाऊँगी डॉक्टर के पास. लेकिन अगर मुझे लगता है कि मेरी 10 दिन में एक शूटिंग आने वाली है, एक फिल्म शुरू हो रही है और इतने लोग मेरा इंतज़ार करेंगे और मेरा कोई ब्रेक डाउन हो गया है, तो मैं जल्द से जल्द ऑफ कोर्स डॉक्टर के पास जाऊंगी और उसको कंट्रोल में रखने की पूरी कोशिश करूंगी. ये आई थिंक हम सब में एक बेसिक डर है, वो है जजमेंट का, कि लोग क्या कहेंगे. हम टू दी एक्सटेंट कि हम लोग अपनी फैमिली से भी नहीं ओपन अप कर पाते हैं कि मुझे ये महसूस हो रहा है, क्योंकि वो जजमेंट हमें हर जगह महसूस होता है. सो आई थिंक इंसान होने के नाते अपनी सबसे पहली चीज़ जो हमें करनी चाहिए, वो अपने चारों ओर अपनी फैमिली में एक ऐसा माहौल देना चाहिए, अपने भाई बहन के लिए, पेरेंट्स के लिए, बच्चों के लिए, जो भी हमारे आसपास हैं, कि लोग बिना डरे, बिना जजमेंट से डरे बाहर आकर ओपन अप होके आपसे एटलीस्ट शेयर कर सकें कि मुझे ये तकलीफ़ हो रही है, मुझे ये समझ नहीं आ रहा है, मुझे ये महसूस हो रहा है, मैं क्या करूं। तो आई थिंक ये जो एक प्यार भरा, जो एक सेफ़ माहौल बनाने की जो जिम्मेदारी है वो हम सबको अपने ऊपर लेनी चाहिए और उसके बारे में सच में कुछ करना चाहिए।
चलिए, गुड लक एंड आई होप कि रायता बहुत टेस्टी है।
आई होप सो टू। थैंक यू सो मच। थैंक यू।
थैंक यू वेरी मच। आप सबको भी
आप सभी ने देखा यहाँ पर इंस्पिरेशन की बात की, बहुत सारी चीज़ों की बात हुई। इंडिपेंडेंस डे का मौका है तो कोई ऐसा मैसेज देना चाहेंगे आज के दिन जो लोग एक्सप्रेस नहीं कर पाते, अपने आप आज़ाद होकर भी अपने आप को डिप्रेशन की कोशिश करते हैं?
नहीं, बड़ा करेक्ट दिन है। इंडिपेंडेंस के दिन पर आई थिंक वी शुड ऑल बी इंडिपेंडेंट फ्रॉम होल्डिंग आवर फीलिंग्स इनसाइड। जो हमारी बातें, जो दिल की बातें होती हैं वो नहीं करते हैं, आई थिंक वो करनी चाहिए। बिकॉज इंग्लिश में कहते हैं बॉटलिंग इट अप। जो आप चीज़ें अंदर रखते हैं दैट्स द फर्स्ट कॉज ऑफ डिप्रेशन। वही चीज़ें आपको आगे जाके ज़्यादा तंग करती हैं, बॉदर करती हैं। सो इट्स गुड टू एक्सप्रेस एंड लेट इट ऑल आउट।
आपकी नज़र में आज़ादी का मतलब क्या है?
यार, आज़ादी का मतलब मेरे लिए इज़ जस्ट इज़ फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन। दैट्स वेरी मैंडेटरी। आई थिंक इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू एक्सप्रेस फ्रीली। हम एक ऐसे देश में रहते हैं जो प्योरली डेमोक्रेटिक है। जो हम फील करते हैं हम कह सकते हैं। मेरे लिए आज़ादी वो है।
जैसे कि आपने कहा कि आप बहुत ओवरथिंक करते
जी।
हैं, आप कई बार डिप्रेशन
जी।
का शिकार बन जाते हैं, तो कैसे आप उसको कोप अप करते हैं, कैसे आप इनको टैकल करते हैं?
वेल लाइक आई सेड, आई थिंक मैं कम्युनिकेटिंग, मैं अपने परिवार से बात करता हूँ। मैं अपनी सारी बातें उनसे शेयर करता हूँ। सो द मोर यू शेयर, आई थिंक द मोर यू आर एबल टू कम्युनिकेट जो आपको चीज़ें बॉदर कर रही हैं।
We cannot express our feelings.
Right.
Sometimes शायद सामने वाला समझ नहीं रहा है,
जी।
we cannot express our feelings. तो तब आप अपने
आई फील फॉर्चुनेटली मेरे साथ अभी तक ऐसा नहीं हुआ है। आई स्पीक टू माई फैमिली वेरी फ्रीली। और मेरा परिवार जो है मुझसे बात करता है, मेरी बातें सुनता है, समझता है। बट अगर आपके साथ ऐसा नहीं होता तो डेफिनेटली आई थिंक कोई शर्म नहीं है अगर आप किसी डॉक्टर के पास जाएं। बल्कि ऐसे साधन जो दिए गए हैं, यू शुड मेक द मोस्ट ऑफ इट एंड यू शुड गो एंड सीक मेडिकल एडवाइस एंड सी अ डॉक्टर फॉर मेंटल हेल्थ।
करण, इसके अलावा हमने देखा है कि आप बहुत सारे अपने काम में जो पोस्ट करते हैं, लोग आपके फैन फॉलोइंग भी है। हमारे पास जो रिपोर्ट
जी।
आई, कुछ स्टूडेंट्स ऑफ द ईयर,
बाकी सब बाद में।
कुछ बताना
जय हिंद।
चाहेंगे?
थैंक यू
आप
वेरी
कर
मच।
रहे हैं
थैंक यू।